On the morning of August 21st, 2017, the routine inside the Alton-Towey household in Farmington Hills, Michigan, was unexpectedly disrupted. 14-year-old Aya Alton-Towey and her two siblings were accustomed to a strict morning schedule. Each school day, they had to be ready to leave by 6:30 a.m. The mornings usually followed a pattern, and any deviation was immediately noticeable. That morning, however, Aya sensed something was wrong. Her mother, Nada Hurani, had not appeared as usual. Concerned by her absence, Aya began looking for her. As she walked through the house, she noticed something strange in the guest bedroom. The window was wide open, and beside it were a ladder and some cleaning supplies, including a bottle of Tilex and a wet rag. Her eyes moved toward the window, and then down the patio below. Lying motionless on the ground beneath the window was her mother, Nada. The scene appeared to suggest a tragic fall, perhaps while cleaning. Aya's reaction was immediate. In a state of shock, she screamed, later recalling it was a kind of scream she did not even realize was coming from her own mouth. She rushed to find her older brother, Muhammad, and together they ran downstairs. Aya called 911 as Muhammad followed. Her voice was panicked and desperate as she told the dispatcher, "We need an ambulance." "Oh my God." While Muhammad received CPR instructions over the phone, Aya ran outside to meet the arriving police. Dashcam footage later showed her frantically sprinting up the driveway, leading an officer to her mother. But by the time emergency responders reached Nada Hurani, it was too late. She was already dead. Nada Hurani was born and raised in Syria. She was deeply rooted in her culture and faith, living her early life as a devout Muslim. She eventually married Dr. Basil Alton-Towey, a man also connected to traditional Islamic values. Together, they built a life in Farmington Hills, Michigan, where they raised 3 children, Muhammad, Aya, and their younger sibling. To those around her, Nada was seen as a dedicated mother, devoted wife, and faithful believer. She wore the hijab and followed the customs expected in her religious and family life. However, as the years passed and she spent more time in the United States, Nada began to change. According to friends and family, she started to find her own voice, stepping away from the role of the submissive wife and pursuing a more independent path. She stopped wearing the hijab and began to express herself more freely. She also took up work as a personal trainer, a move that represented her growing confidence and independence. Her evolving identity brought conflict into her marriage. Her husband, Basil, struggled to accept these changes. The couple's relationship became increasingly strained, marked by tension and control. In 2016, the situation reached a boiling point when Basil was charged with domestic violence for assaulting Nada. He later entered a court-ordered domestic violence program. By 2017, Nada had started dating casually, something that further widened the gap between her and Basil and also troubled her son Muhammad. Those closest to her said she was beginning to truly discover who she was. She was no longer the woman others expected her to be. She was becoming the woman she wanted to be. But that personal growth would soon be cut short in the most tragic way. When investigators arrived at the Alton-Towey residence on the morning of August 21st, 2017, they were initially presented with what looked like a tragic accident. Nada Hurani's body was found lying on the patio, just beneath an open second-story window. Inside the guest bedroom next to the window, police found a ladder, a bottle of Tilex cleaning spray, and a wet rag. The placement of these items seemed to suggest that Nada had been cleaning the windows and accidentally fallen to her death. At first glance, the setup supported this theory. It was reasonable to believe that she may have lost her balance while cleaning and fallen through the window. However, that explanation quickly began to unravel as investigators started gathering more details. The first major development came from the medical examiner, Dr. Oljabisa J. Dragovic. He determined that Nada had already died before her body ever hit the ground. His analysis indicated no typical injuries associated with a fall from such a height. Instead, evidence pointed to a different cause of death, nasal-oral blockage, meaning someone may have suffocated her before staging the scene. This finding raised serious questions about what had really happened in that guest bedroom. Investigators turned to the home security system, which featured 6 surveillance cameras. One of the cameras had been recording during the time of the incident. Although the footage did not capture the exact moment Nada was pushed or thrown, it did record the moment her body hit the ground. Crucially, a light from the guest bedroom created a shadow on the lawn below. The shadow showed a person with short hair appearing to lift a heavy object, presumably Nada's body, toward the window shortly before she was seen falling. This led detectives to a grim realization. The scene had been staged to mimic an accident, while the reality pointed to a calculated and deliberate act of murder. As detectives began to piece together the truth behind Nada Hirania's death, they relied heavily on two key sources: surveillance footage from the family's home and the results of the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner, Dr. Ojabisa J. Dragovic. Together, these sources provided a factual and chilling reconstruction of what really happened on the morning of August 21st, 2017. The family's home was equipped with 6 surveillance cameras, one of which recorded the exact moment Nada's body fell to patio. Importantly, the footage did not show her coming out of the window by herself. Instead, the camera captured the glow of a light from the guest bedroom, which cast clear shadows on the grass below. Within these shadows, investigators observed a figure with short hair lifting a heavy object toward the window, moments before Nada's body was seen falling. Though the video did not reveal exact identities, the activity it captured directly contradicted the idea of an accidental fall. Simultaneously, Dr. Dragovic's autopsy findings strengthened suspicions of foul play. He determined that Nada had not died from injuries sustained in a fall. Instead, her death was caused by nasal oral blockage, indicating that she had likely been suffocated. The blockage could have resulted from a pillow or cloth being forced over her face, a method consistent with a deliberate act of murder rather than an accident. These two pieces of evidence, visual and medical, formed the foundation of the investigation's shift from accident to homicide. The shadows on the lawn and the forensic proof of suffocation painted a clear picture. Nada Hirani had been killed before her body was thrown out the window, and the crime scene had been intentionally staged to hide the truth. As investigators ruled out the possibility of an accidental fall, their attention naturally turned to the people inside the house at the time of Nada Hirania's death. The only male present that morning was her 16-year-old son, Mohammed Altantawi. With Dr. Basil Altantawi confirmed to be miles away on probation and tracked by an electronic monitoring device, Mohammed quickly became the focus of the investigation. Initially, Mohammed denied having any involvement in the incident. When questioned by detectives, he insisted that he had not been in the guest room and knew nothing about what had happened. However, under continued questioning, his story began to shift. He later claimed that he had interacted with his mother that morning, saying she asked him to get her cleaning spray. He also stated that he was holding the ladder while she cleaned and that she accidentally fell. Detectives, however, were already armed with forensic facts that contradicted this version of events. The autopsy confirmed that Nada had died from suffocation before her body hit the ground, making an accidental fall impossible. Surveillance footage showed a shadowed figure appearing to lift something heavy to the window shortly before Nada's body was seen falling, casting further doubt on Mohammed's account. As the investigation deepened, friends of the family provided key insights into Mohammed's relationship with his mother. They described a growing resentment toward Nada, especially as she became more independent and stopped adhering to traditional expectations. Mohammed blamed her for the breakdown of the family and reportedly felt that she had betrayed their values. Investigators learned he had even changed her name in his phone contacts to Dog, underscoring the level of animosity he felt. With inconsistencies in his statements and a clear motive forming, Mohammed Altantawi moved from being a witness to the central suspect in a case that now clearly pointed to premeditated murder. Following the investigation and mounting evidence against Mohammed Altantawi, authorities arrested the 16-year-old and charged him with first-degree premeditated murder in connection with the death of his mother, Nada Hirani. However, the road to trial would be long and legally complex, with significant disputes over the admissibility of Mohammed's statements to law enforcement. During initial police interviews, Mohammed had changed his story several times, first denying involvement, then claiming to have helped his mother clean when she allegedly fell. His defense team later argued that these statements should be thrown out, citing that Mohammed was a minor at the time and was allegedly guided towards certain answers by detectives. They claimed that the investigators presented him with scenarios, subtly influencing his version of events. The legal battle over the confession escalated to the Michigan Supreme Court. Ultimately, prosecutors agreed not to use Muhammad's statements at trial, opting instead to build their case on the substantial circumstantial evidence available. This included the surveillance footage showing suspicious shadows consistent with someone lifting an object out the window, the forensic conclusion that Nada was already deceased before the fall, and Muhammad's behavior following the incident. Cell phone records also revealed that Muhammad and his father, Dr. Basil Al-Tantawi, exchanged approximately 20 calls and texts on the morning of the murder. While these communications raised suspicions, especially given the family's history of domestic conflict, no direct evidence tied Basil to the crime. He was never charged. Despite the absence of confession and the lack of physical evidence directly linking Muhammad to the act, prosecutors remain confident that the totality of circumstantial evidence told a compelling and credible story of premeditated murder. The case proceeded to trial several years later, where a jury would be asked to weigh that evidence and determine the truth. In 2022, several years after the murder of Nada Hurani, her son Muhammad Al-Tantawi finally stood trial for first-degree premeditated murder. With his earlier statements the police excluded from evidence, the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial facts, surveillance footage, and witness testimony to present their case. Prosecutors framed the murder as the result of a deteriorating mother-son relationship, exacerbated by the family's ongoing divorce proceedings. They pointed out that Muhammad had changed Nada's name in his phone to Dog, a reflection of the deep resentment he reportedly held toward her. Witnesses had previously told investigators that Muhammad blamed Nada for the family's breakdown and viewed her increasing independence and Americanization as betrayals of their values. Central to the prosecution's case was the testimony of Aya Al-Tantawi, Muhammad's younger sister. She described the tension in the household, particularly after the domestic violence charge against their father and the subsequent divorce. Aya told the court that Muhammad believed Nada was trying to destroy their family and take everything from their father, including money and property. Surveillance footage also played a significant role. Although it did not show the exact moment of the murder, it captured shadows consistent with someone lifting a body to the window just before Nada was seen falling. Footage in the aftermath further appeared to show Muhammad stopping CPR efforts, even as he continued to count aloud with the dispatcher. Prosecutors argued this was staged behavior and another indication of a cover-up. Muhammad's defense team maintained that there was no physical evidence directly tying him to the murder. They questioned the clarity and reliability of the shadow footage and emphasized that Muhammad had planned to move in with his father, offering no motive to kill Nada. However, the jury ultimately found the circumstantial evidence compelling. Muhammad Al-Tantawi was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. The court sentenced him to 35 to 60 years in prison. The trial closed a painful chapter for the Al-Tantawi family and marked a legal resolution in a case shaped by complex family dynamics, shifting identities, and ultimately, a tragic death. This final section focuses on Aya Al-Tantawi's life in the wake of her mother Nada Hurani's murder and her brother Muhammad's conviction. After the tragedy, Aya made the significant decision to enter the foster care system rather than live with her father, Dr. Basil Al-Tantawi. Her choice was shaped by years of witnessing abuse and fearing for her safety. Aya openly stated that she could not trust her father due to what she had seen him do to her mother, including physical violence during the marriage. One of the most emotionally charged moments occurred during Muhammad's sentencing hearing. While her father gave a statement in support of Muhammad and barely mentioned Nada, Aya confronted him afterward in the courthouse hallway. Her outburst, captured and later discussed, expressed years of pent-up anger and disappointment. She screamed at him, declaring that he meant nothing to her, a moment that symbolized her emotional breaking point after enduring years of dysfunction and trauma. Since then, Aya has had no contact with her father and is focused on building a new life. She completed college in just 3 years and plans to attend law school. Her goal is to advocate for children who experience similar family abuse and trauma. Aya's journey represents resilience and a commitment to transformation, grounded entirely in real-life decisions and public statements. Her forward-looking path serves as a closing reflection on the long-term consequences of domestic violence and familial betrayal, all rooted in the verified facts of this case. On the morning of October 2nd, 2017, a call was placed in 911 at approximately 6:45 a.m. Aaron Fryer's girlfriend, alarmed and confused, reported that both her boyfriend, 50-year-old Aaron Fryer, and his 15-year-old daughter, Ellie Fryer, were missing. She had been contacted by Aaron's younger daughters, ages 11 and 8, who had woken up and discovered something deeply disturbing inside the family's Medford, Oregon home. Upon entering the house, the two young girls were met with a chilling sight. The older of the two sisters, just 11 years old at the time, shared critical information with responding officers. She told them she had been awakened around 5 a.m. by the sound of her father shouting and something crashing inside the house. Alarmed by the commotion, she walked toward the living room. When she placed her hand on the couch, she felt a wet substance. Turning on the light to see what it was, she discovered her hand was covered in blood. What followed was the realization that there was blood everywhere. Her statement helped paint the initial picture of what had occurred before dawn. In addition to what she saw, she reported hearing a voice in the living room during the disturbance, a voice she recognized. It was Gavin McFarland, her older sister Ellie's 19-year-old boyfriend. This critical detail would mark the beginning of a complex and disturbing investigation. The crime scene, the presence of blood, and the initial eyewitness account began to direct law enforcement toward understanding the timeline and potential suspects. With two family members missing and a bloody scene left behind, authorities moved swiftly to gather evidence and conduct interviews based on the facts available in those early hours. In the weeks leading up to his murder, Aaron Fryer had grown increasingly concerned about his 15-year-old daughter, Ellie's relationship with 19-year-old Gavin McFarland. According to Curtis Smith, a longtime friend of Aaron's, the father believed Gavin was a bad influence. Ellie, once a high-performing student actively involved in school activities like band, had started to change after she began dating Gavin. Her academic focus and general behavior began to decline, causing Aaron to take action. Roughly a month before Aaron disappeared, he officially forbid Ellie from continuing her relationship with Gavin. This decision created tension within the family and sparked further conflict between Aaron and Gavin. The situation escalated when Gavin reportedly called police to claim that Aaron had come to his residence and threatened to kill him, though the full context of that confrontation was never confirmed. The call underscored the growing volatility between the two. Meanwhile, classmates and peers noticed the emotional intensity of Ellie and Gavin's connection. Ellen Delsman, who knew Ellie from school, said the young couple saw themselves as modern-day versions of Romeo and Juliet, two lovers kept apart by adult interference. This romanticized view added a layer of urgency and defiance to their relationship and provided context for what police would later believe was a motive in the murder. Investigators began to piece together the strained relationship between Aaron and his daughter as a key component in understanding how the crime unfolded. With increasing parental control, a forbidden relationship, and rising conflict, the emotional and psychological groundwork for what came next was already in place. This complex family dynamic would later become central to both the investigation and the courtroom narratives. Shortly after launching a search for Gavin McFarland, police made a significant discovery. They spotted Gavin walking down the street in Medford, Oregon, alongside Ellie Fryer and a 22-year-old man named Russell Jones, too. All three were immediately brought in for questioning. What followed were a series of conflicting stories that would prove pivotal to the investigation. Ellie Fryer was the first to speak. During her taped police interview, she alleged that her father had been abusive, emotionally, verbally, and occasionally physically. She claimed he had, on more than one occasion, grabbed her by the throat and pinned her against the wall when displeased. According to Ellie, she had planned to run away and was waiting for Gavin and Russell to pick her up. She then told police that it was Russell who arrived at the house with a machete and attacked her father. Ellie insisted that she fled as soon as she heard the screams. But detectives found her version of events hard to believe. Her demeanor during questioning was notably calm, and her timeline did not align with other evidence. Detective Bill Ford later stated that the police believed Ellie simply wanted her father out of the way so she could continue her relationship with Gavin. Her claims of abuse and fear were seen as efforts to justify a premeditated plan rather than spontaneous flight. When investigators confronted Russell Jones with Ellie's story, he denied being the attacker. Instead, Jones claimed that it was Gavin McFarland who had gone into the living room and brutally attacked Aaron Fryer with a baseball bat. Jones said he arrived afterward and helped move the body. He told officers they had wrapped Aaron in a tarp, loaded him into the trunk of Aaron's own car, and dumped the body. Jones also said that the murder weapon, a baseball bat, was discarded near the dump site and that Ellie was the one who threw it there. These contradictory statements were turning points in the case. Police began connecting the dots and started viewing Gavin and Ellie not just as witnesses or frightened teenagers, but as central figures in a calculated and collaborative crime. After his police interview, Russell Jones agreed to lead investigators to the location where Aaron Fryer's body had been dumped. Guided by Jones, authorities traveled to a wooded area off an embankment in Medford, Oregon. There, hidden beneath the natural overgrowth, they found Aaron's body. It had been wrapped in a tarp and transported using the trunk of his own vehicle. Near the body, investigators discovered a baseball bat, a critical piece of evidence. Jones had previously stated that Gavin McFarland used the bat to strike Aaron Fryer and that Ellie Fryer had thrown it near the dump site. Its presence confirmed parts of Jones' confession and directly contradicted Ellie's earlier claim that Russell had attacked her father with a machete. No machete was ever recovered at the scene, further undermining Ellie's story. A medical examination provided additional confirmation. Aaron Fryer's cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma, consistent with being beaten by a baseball bat. The forensic findings aligned closely with the details Jones had given to investigators, reinforcing the credibility of his account over Ellie's version of events. This phase of the investigation shifted the case from conflicting personal testimonies to physical evidence. The discovery of the bat and the condition of the body validated significant elements of the narrative that placed Gavin at the center of the assault. With the location of the body, the confirmed cause of death, and the recovery of the suspected weapon, police began to solidify their understanding of the crime. The roles of Gavin, Ellie, and Russell grew clearer with each piece of evidence, guiding investigators toward the truth behind Aaron Fryer's murder. Once police located Aaron Fryer's body and corroborated key elements of Russell Jones' confession, they turned their attention back to Gavin McFarland. Confronted with the physical evidence in Jones' detailed statement, Gavin ultimately broke down and confessed to killing his girlfriend's father. In his taped confession, Gavin explained the motivations behind the attack. He claimed that Ellie Fryer had told him she was pregnant and that her father was abusive. According to Gavin, this combination of fear, anger, and a desire to protect Ellie had been building inside him for some time. He said that he finally snapped and decided to act. During interrogation, Gavin described striking Aaron with a baseball bat, and he even demonstrated how he carried out the attack. But Gavin's confession went further than just admitting to the crime. He placed a large part of the blame on Ellie. According to him, she was the one who initiated the plan. He told police that Ellie said, "Go out in the front room, take him out, and text me when it's done." This statement pointed directly to premeditation and suggested that the murder was not a spontaneous act of passion, but planned killing that both had discussed in advance. However, when police investigated Gavin's claims about Ellie's pregnancy and alleged abuse, neither could be substantiated. Ellie was not pregnant, and there was no evidence that Aaron Fryer had abused her or her younger sisters. These fabrications played a significant role in how the prosecution shaped their case. Gavin's belief that he was acting out of protection was based on information that turned out to be false. Gavin's confession became a critical piece of the investigation. It supported Jones' version of events, disproved Ellie's account, and highlighted the manipulative dynamics within the relationship. By admitting to the murder and implicating Ellie in the planning, Gavin helped law enforcement understand how the crime was orchestrated, not as a chaotic or emotionally driven moment, but as a deliberate act influenced by lies, loyalty, and misguided conviction. With confessions obtained, evidence secured, and all three individuals in custody, the legal process moved forward. Each of the participants in the plot that led to Aaron Fryer's death eventually accepted plea deals, and their sentences reflected their respective roles in the crime. Gavin McFarland, who had admitted to striking Aaron with a baseball bat and described the act in detail during police interrogation, pled guilty to murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2043 at the age of 45. His confession which revealed both the violent nature of the attack and Ellie's role in planning it, became the foundation for his prosecution and sentencing. Russell Jones, too, who acknowledged assisting in moving the body and leading police to the dump site, pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Though he denied direct involvement in the actual killing, his participation in the aftermath was significant. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison and is scheduled for release in April 2031, when he will be 35 years old. Ellie Fryer, the 15-year-old at the center of the plot, also pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Despite her age at the time, the court treated her role in planning and coordinating the crime seriously. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2041, at the age of 39. While the courtroom proceedings brought legal closure, the emotional toll remained. As Detective Sharon Reynolds observed, the deepest tragedy was not only the violent loss of Aaron Fryer, but also the devastating impact on his surviving children. His two youngest daughters, just 8 and 11 years old at the time of the murder, were left to grow up without their father and without their older sister. The aftermath of the crime extended far beyond the legal system, leaving a fractured family and a community forever changed by the events of one early October morning.